know what it is.
That's right.
And if you don't, you better ask somebody.
You knew.
I to the Ism, H to the Izzo talk show. Back like we never left. All right, so tell a friend, just in case somebody has tuned us out, Miss Mac. I have no idea why they would, because they know that we take Cville to the world and bring the world to Cville. Can I get an amen?
Still here. That's right.
That's right. Still here, still standing for the people. So you know I hit this IMHO talk show. However you would like to get in touch with us, let us know what you would like us to discuss, what you would like us to continue to talk about. All that good stuff, Max, because with so much going on, as we always say, the red lights are lit, the heart of the city, the soul of the city, right? What all we can continue to do to be informed, right? But also what are our action items, to help save the city, if you will. So without further ado, to help us kick off this conversation, we have none other than former mayor, the Honorable Nikuyah J. Walker. Nikuyah, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, I'm blessed and highly favored, and it's always a blessing to be in your presence. You know that, soul sister number one.
It really is.
Thanks for having me.
Look, don't be modest. It really is. I enjoy every conversation with you.
I don't know about the saving the city part, but we can
try
talk about some of the needs.
Yeah. And like there's so much. It's so much serious. Definitely not making light of anything, particularly like the tragedies recently. Thoughts and prayers to all of the families. All of those involved, and all of those that just keep, struggling. Like for a better day for our future. And so, Miss Max, what I wanted to do, if it's cool with you and Nikuyah, like I wanted to get sort of your main points, because I don't want us to run out of time. Like, so if you were able to prioritize for us what bullet points we should hit on what you think is most pertinent right now that our listening audience should be paying attention to, right? So we can, have a call to action, like so we can get the boots on the ground. I don't know, like maybe top 3, 4, things that like you would like to cover in this hour.
I always like to talk about criminal justice, housing. We need to somebody needs to be talking about like just the broader like direction, whether there's an agenda when we're talking about the Black community. How are we going to come together versus kind of like piecemealing it in silos? So that's important. So those 3, local government and responsiveness, both from the city and the county. I'm seeing some of the same concerns that I've been speaking about forever, with just the lack of being able to communicate directly what their plans are. And you can see the percentage of Black people. I remember Holly years ago saying that, Holly Edwards saying we should get T-shirts made and put the percentage that we are of the population on it. And, we laughed at her, at the comment when she said it. But I have thought about that every year, probably since she made the statement, where we can see like the percentage at that time was around 18%, and now it's showing around 15%. And where are we going? And what does that mean for the people who remain here? So those are all, important topics.
Okay. Like, so Ms. Max, where should we start? What you think? I'm hearing all that. First that comes to your mind, pressing question and issue today.
Well, I think that we should start in the probably most appropriate place as far as the city is concerned. And City of Charlottesville experienced a very unfortunate event just a short while ago where there was some gun violence that impacted physically 5 individuals, ranging from ages 10 years old to, I believe, 54 years old. It's one of the premises for us even having this conversation right now to discuss the soul of the city, state of the city. And so I think that that's the appropriate place to start.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Nikuyah, I guess unless it's something, in particular that you have in mind, like, I will, sort of nudge you with the question of like where we tackle that.
Well, actually all the points that she just mentioned were priorities.
Oh, for sure.
Are in some way tangled into this very situation. But
no, totally fair. And the reason that I wanted to narrow down on a specific question with that, because it's rattling in my mind. I was thinking of the right way to word it based off what you just said. Because Nikuyah, the big thing with me that I want your take on is that a lot of times we we have our qualms with law enforcement, right? Like with police, and rightfully
I still
so.
do, but go ahead.
right. But and that's why I say, rightfully so. But at the same time, they have a job to do, right? Mm-hmm. And so we are always fighting that struggle of balancing, talking about how do we clean up the streets? How do we make the community safe, right? Yeah. So on one part, there's a job that we expect the police to do. But at the same time, we don't want them profiling. You follow what I'm saying? So there's a delicate balance of when a young man or women will get locked up, we will get up in arms. But then if we're real with ourselves, we gotta be like, what did we do, right? To be more supportive to that young person, to prevent them from going into a life of crime to where the police had to be called in or had to do a job. Like, so what are your thoughts, to Miss Max's point and that, like, that balance as a community and, how we address things like the shootings that happen?
One thing we lose sight of often is what's the root of the problem. Because we can talk about officers coming in, police cleanup, and we will always, I have said consistently since 2017, and before then, but I've been talking very publicly since that time, that these kind of encounters, yes, it hasn't been 5 people getting shot at a July 4th event before, so that's a new thing. But we all have a list that we can go down and ramble off names of loved ones, people we cared about, people we care about, who they cared about, who are no longer with us. Mm-hmm. So the violence, that's not a new thing for Charlottesville, unfortunately. Absolutely. And so we are talking about, yes, things have escalated to a certain point. You ask someone on 10th Street if they think things have escalated and they have memories of West Haven in the 90s, they probably will say, no, it's just a continuation, right? And so then you have to ask, like, what is the root cause there? And I always say there are one of two things. You don't think that Black people, Black mothers, Black fathers, Black kids are capable of more, right? So you either think that, or you have to own like what kind of culture this city has. And we know that poverty produces the type of outcomes that we are experiencing right now. It produces people who have had so much trauma, so much pain, that they act out in ways that people were acting out on July 4th and have been acting out in an escalated way, according to the city police since 2020. And so what's the root of that? And if we go right into what parents need to do differently, what parents should have done differently, then we can remove what kind of culture this city has consistently for hundreds of years and definitely for the past few decades, created. And it's not.
Parents certainly play a role in it.
Parents do play a role in it, yes. And hopefully you are doing everything you can, to tackle, the problems. What I've often said, I remember years ago when I lived in Garrett, Friendship Court, they wanted to do a story on me and highlight, oh, you're so different than all the other parents down here. And I'm not, right? Yes, I have different activities, but the people that you're talking about, they are my friends. And I often would say it's a difference between like having support and not having support a lot of times, but I'm not going to blame a person who couldn't, struggle through it, differently than I did. I want to figure out like, what does that person need? And can we give them the support? People don't have the same mindsets. People can't just, work through something. I often think of when people are like domestic violence. Some people can go through domestic violence and it makes them stronger. Some people, it breaks them down and they, 10 years later, they're still dealing with a relationship that happened, that ended, 8 years before the 10-year time frame we're talking about. Like these things impact, families a lot. And we know that poverty produces this kind of callous nature where people are unfeeling, uncaring. And some of the parents, because we know a lot of these parents that people are in the media being portrayed as parents who are not doing their best, parents who don't care about their kids. And what I want people to think about often, what I saw was parents that no matter what they did in their house, once their kids left outside the door, it was a lot of mess for their kids to get into. And we also have to think about the response. I was working out this morning and there were 4 white kids in a car getting high and it wasn't weed, right? The fact that they can pull up in a garage, sit there comfortably and get high for an hour. Black kids, I don't want anybody's kids to be able to do that, but there's immediately somebody has already looked at the car, saw black kids in it, called the police. It's an immediate call. I kept thinking like, what happens to kids when you call the police? Like, who helps them? It's 8 a.m. They're driving a nice blue SUV. Where are your parents? I'm thinking the same type of things that we're talking about with accountability. But at the same time, I know part of the answer even for them. It just looks differently because they're not portrayed in the media the way our kids, but those kids are suffering just like our, kids are. It's just like our kids are highlighted and they'll probably eventually get help, hopefully, and our kids don't.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for that. So before we get to the ideas for the systematic changes, though, let's start with the accountability of the community. And the reason I always call our people to the to the mat is that because we can keep generation after generation saying what the system doesn't do for us and how it oppresses us and whatnot, right? But you could have 2 kids living side by side, right? Similar households, and there's different decision making that happens. And I totally get that there's generational traumas and all that good stuff that happens. But as a community, I feel like just like we demand accountability at city council meetings, we have to start demanding accountability in our communities as well. So I want to kind of start with those steps and then we go to the systematic piece,
Yeah, I'm not talking about not holding accountable, but what I am asking us to look at, it's like, let's take, most people love music, so let's just use that as an analogy. So if Lauryn Hill never makes an album again, if her kids came out banging, with a banger, we wouldn't be surprised because we know there's a foundation, there's something happening in the household, right? That there's still connections, even if she hasn't made another album. But I feel like sometimes what we ask is the people who don't know that process, don't know the system, didn't fail through it or grow through it, however you want to say, we ask them, why haven't you created what Lauryn Hill has ever? Right. And so some people just don't have the same foundation. Even if you end up in the same space where you're struggling mentally, it is what her kids are experiencing in that house, even if their mom never made another album. And even if she struggled, is very different from a parent who never had that kind of platform or connections. So one of my closest friends growing up, and I've used this story a lot, when I had a kid as a teenager, I had paternal, maternal, grandparents, aunt, cousins, everyone. There's not a time where I couldn't go to a class that my daughter's paternal grandmother wasn't like, oh, I'll pick her up after I get off at the post office at night. Like I had childcare. I could go back to CHS and finish. There are some people who I know, one of my closest friends, she did not have that person. She did not have somebody meeting her so she could go to school and for them to take her kid. And if your energy is already low, what we ask people to do sometimes is I think you should push through it no matter what without understanding that those building blocks that should be in place, they are not there for everyone. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm with you on accountability. As far as my kids, it's just like we've struggled through a lot, and I've told them consistently, I expect you to struggle through it, right? And I'm going to hold you accountable because nobody's going to come up in here and save you, right? And so I'm never speaking from a systemic accountability from that angle. I don't ever, unfortunately, they are not in a position where they probably can even assist, which has been my struggle for the past, 3 years now, because after being in the position with the city as mayor, seeing the things I saw, I probably would have done better in life not being there, right? Because now when people say, what does that 30,000 foot view look like? I'm saying I can tell you what the people in some of those positions said, but they're not doing. And so you're really asking people to really make a way out of no way. And unless they can figure out this capitalistic system in a better way than the majority can, what's going to happen to, to their families? And so it's a big question mark. And I'm not even necessarily maybe the person who can answer that best because I'm still struggling with it.
I have had the fortunate and unfortunate opportunity, if you will, to really have a growing understanding of exactly what you just described, Nikuyah. And I say that because our family happened to come in contact with a young gentleman, trying not to cry, whose family had a recent encounter with police, and he's a minor. And that situation wrecked him, and to be able to be so close and see the fragile line that he toes in terms of turning to a life of, all the things that we don't want him involved in, guns, drugs, robbery, etc., different things like that, and turning the right way is so fragile. It's so fragile. And this guy, he can't snap his fingers as a kid. I can't snap my fingers and you give me a new family or a new home or a different neighborhood or different circumstances or a different background. And then not the worst thing, but another component of this is that I didn't choose this. I did not choose it. I am stuck here. Now, what do I do with it? And every time I have the chance to talk to him, I'm always encouraging him to listen, do something with your life. Do something with your life. Are you listening to me? Do something with your life. And so it has helped me to understand that we do not give enough of value to the fact that there are some people that are in just a lost, difficult, unbelievably difficult life situations, and they cannot do anything about it. They don't necessarily have the power to do anything about it. And the question remains is like, who should that be important to, right? Because it's not necessarily important to the police when they show up to arrest you that your mama didn't raise you like she was supposed to, So
the village,
right.
We're all part of the village.
Yeah, that's. Go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking back to what Charles said about accountability. And if you talk to some of those young men, kids, they're kids. I had a recent conversation a few months back with the two prosecutors, Almar and Charlottesville. And one of the topics of our conversation is like, if there was a program that existed, diversionary, what's the age that you would accept, right? Because when you talk about a 24-year-old like white student at UVA, you're not like, oh, this grown man, like he's a man, but you still understand like where that person is at mentally. But when we start talking about an 18-year-old to 24-year-old Black kid, I mean, you've been a man since you were 5 and threw your chair back in your classroom, right? So the perception of our kids being not able to be kids and not able to make mistakes, that's one thing. If you talk to them, though, they will tell you that their fathers, their uncles, many times their mothers, their grandmothers, aunties, uncles, like there's a history of incarceration throughout the family. I remember when I was at Region 10 that men would come into me, and some men would tell me how they were sexually abused in prison and they still thought they had it together. Some men would tell me how they were sexually abused in prison, and then they would tell me how broken and fractured they were from what happened to them. And they couldn't even, figure out whether they were actually men anymore. Right. So that was a common topic that came up. And so my question back to you is, with this history of incarceration that the city has experienced, and if you ask some of these young kids who are out here shooting, using drugs, all of those things, where were their families at? They probably would say, a majority of them, not all of them, but a majority of them would tell you that they were incarcerated. Then we turn to the people who were incarcerated and want them to have figured it out through whatever they went through incarcerated, to be able to then come home and then instill something in their kids that they have even had ripped from them. And then at the same time, and so then this is what I'm talking about, the system. Then the new police chief comes into town, and he says, Kacha says, we know who are committing these shootings. They're mostly juveniles, and we will lock them up. Locking people up has never worked. We know that it does not work, right? It feeds a system that either destroys you further, it serves capitalism best, and it breaks down families. They are not sending even if the 4 white kids that were sitting in that car this morning, the police pull them over, their fate is not a criminal justice system. They're going to get someone is going to try until somebody's last breath to get them the assistance that they need. And so we put this burden on Black people to be like these superhuman beings, to, no matter what, be resilient through everything. And then if you're not, then it's something flawed about you, something wrong with you.
Totally get what you're saying. But will we agree that would still need to be the last resort if that's what it comes to? For instance, like if there is a young man that's a gang member, and he's recklessly shooting in a neighborhood and hitting 9-year-olds, then we're not going to be like, oh yeah, just leave them in the street. Like, let them keep roaming the streets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't. We should expect that there's an understanding that you can't harm people, right? But if you try to start with whoever committed that shooting, trying to get them to understand that you were wrong, or sending them to prison for 20 years, then having them come back out and think something's going to change, that's what I'm talking about, is not going to work either, right? And at the rate we're going, we're not going to prevent future shootings, is all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Like, we do not have the mechanisms in place to prevent a future shooting, to connect with the people who are currently doing the shooting. There is major substance abuse happening in these circles, right? You're talking about connecting with people whose brains are being controlled by substances, right? There's no plan to get those substances off the street but to lock them up. I can tell you what just happened with a client of mine, trying to get them into substance abuse inpatient treatment center just a week and a half ago through Region 10. That did not go well. I have nothing nice to say about, the entire process. And I have another client who went to an inpatient facility to get help for substance abuse, and they didn't like their attitude. And so they were going to put them out on the street after hours, 2 hours away from home. So these are the type of, when people are trying to get help, the services that they need to assist them, they don't exist.
So aren't those isolated incidences though? Because we have like Uhuru, we have Home to Hope, right? We have mentoring groups, and like they do help people, right? Like, so there are services.
So this is the thing. And I'll just speak from what I know of Home to Hope, because I don't, know today what is happening with Home to Hope. I've said it on the show before. One of the things that I advocated for and got a little bit of, and I'm sure if you checked with the city manager, Home to Hope's budget that included monies for services probably hasn't increased. That budget started with $100,000 to be able to, when people came and needed assistance, that we had something other than "I hope you get that" to offer them, right? Because we know that people need assistance. If you don't have it, if you don't have the network, if you don't have a job, then and if you spent time in prison, you're probably not able to get a job and live in the city of Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. If the city is so concerned about how people fare after incarceration, why is that budget the same? Right? These other groups you're talking about, yes, let's say Rob goes out, felon for whoever, right? They go out and they do whatever they're able to do. How many people can they reach, and how long does it take to undo decades and decades of trauma? Yeah. Like if you're talking about kids who don't have much hope to hold on to, that their lives can be any differently. So we think this is a beautiful city. And I'm thinking of a few years ago when I was in office, the superintendent and I had a discussion over in West Haven. And one of the young men there, I asked him, "What did you dream of becoming when you were younger?" Mm-hmm. And he told me in that moment, as a 21-year-old, I think at that time, that nobody had asked him that question yet. So you take that kid, and then you want them to have dreams and hopes for a future, when nobody has even asked them, what do you even, who do you think you can become? Right. So
thank you for that. Yeah.
I just don't, it burdens, it breaks my heart that the first thing we run to is beating down the very people who've had to figure out how to survive this community, to say what they didn't do, what they shouldn't have, should have done differently, how much more resilient, how much more grit we wish they had. One of the things out of that incident, and I'm going to talk about some people, not their names, but what I saw is people like, oh, that could have been anybody that got shot. That could have been your family, whatever. And some of the people who were saying it could have been on the other side of the gun. Right? Like you just happened to not be on the other side of the gun in that moment. But we were quick to talk about how because you were not on the other side of that gun, that you thought you could, promote incarceration and promote, even I've seen people saying they wish people would die, like that type of thing. We don't want anyone harmed, but we also have to understand that when it could have easily been you as the person that they're talking about.
Yeah. I think just in general, everyone, the community at large, needs to change their perspective on the value of life. Because it's not about everybody. Yes. It could have been everybody, right? It was, it impacted someone's life, and that should be the important part of it. And in response to your comment earlier, Charles, I do think that, yes, we do have the city has a ton of local groups whose mission is to address the same issues that we're talking about here right now. But the efficacy rate of those things, the funding of those things, and whether or not those programs work in the way that they should, can they be tweaked? And this other problem has been addressed publicly by more than one person, which is that a lot of these organizations aren't performing to the level that they most certainly can. So that's an issue there too. And I'll mention one other thing, Nikuyah, before we change topics here, is that it's always surprising to me when we talk about the social determinants of health, which we've voiced one way or another, our conversation so far, where those decision makers, those who are playing a part in the end result of those determinants of health, always have questions about how did something happen, right? So as long when we intellectualize it and we talk about how education affects people and lack of education affects people, lack of housing affects people, food insecurity affects people. We talk about all these things, and we got it. And then we talk about the end results of homelessness, and this or crime or this or that. And then some kind of way they lose the concept of what contributed to the output of it. The results is the output. And these are people who are making decisions about individuals' lives when we get to that point, once they've been impacted by those social determinants of health and it's impacted their life in some way.
That's deep. Okay. I like that perspective. I don't think I've heard that. I don't think I've ever heard that perspective.
I've heard it. Yes.
Yeah. That's what's up. That's what's up. Well, thank y'all. I think this is a very rich conversation. Nikuyah, we're going to take a quick break, and then if it's cool with you, when we come back, we'll get, we'll do the last half to be very specific with like what we see that needs to be done, right? Like what is our ask? What is our request of the city, right? Of the current systematic structure, and how we think that they can make things better. Is that cool?
So my service, I'm assuming it's me now because my service went out again. So sorry for that.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. Yeah. So I don't know if you heard me. I said we're going to take a quick break and then we'll get back to addressing, our ask of the, of our current structure and what we want to see improved. Yeah.
And I have a couple just comments about like Max was throwing out the list: education, housing, food insecurity, and and I wanted to touch base on that before we move on.
Absolutely. So let's take a quick break and we'll jump right to it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I am HO Talk Show. Be right back. Go ahead and take your break. Tell a friend to tune in. Whatever you need to do. Be right back with none other than Nikuyah Walker. I am HO Talk Show. How you feel, Miss Max?
Good. Miss Walker still with us?
I'm here.
All right.
Good stuff. So Nikuyah, in our last 10 minutes, I want to make sure that you go ahead and address the points you wanted to address, and then we'll leave with some marching orders, whether it be for the families or whether it be for for City Hall, right? But I'll kick it over to you to make sure that you touched on those points you wanted to make.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking back to a year and a half or so ago when the school board chair said that they can only, reach students or teach students who allow them to do so, right? And that's just, again, not how that works. Housing, I have a recent example of advocacy down at with Piedmont Housing Alliance Phase 1. I went to City Council and said, hey, we made a mistake because this contract was signed when I was on council, right? Because this isn't affordable for families, from what I'm hearing, living in Friendship, Kendallwood Phase 1. Yes. The money is there, according to the city. I sent them a list of things that they could do. Kendallwood, C-Scrap, what was created under one of Wes's proposals years ago. So families wouldn't be struggling to meet their needs. And to just give you an example of this, when we talk about affordable housing, which has been a big topic throughout the city, it's based on your income. So when they said we're going to create these affordable units at 30%, 40%, 50%, they try to do the 60 to 80% because they want higher income people because they don't think low income people can live amongst themselves. But they know people are struggling. I think the last number I got that maybe 78 or so families could be affected by this. I'm understanding that the money is there. They were waiting on Sunshine from PHA to give them the numbers. That was this September 29th. So probably that evening, once I had the conversation while walking by someone talking about it was unaffordable for them to live there while at a birthday party, they were not talking to me. I got on it, trying to figure out, started going door to door, talking to families, talked to several families who were having the same issues, and it hasn't been fixed. So some of the times we think we're pouring a lot of resources into this community. What consistently is that we are giving some people middle class, upper middle class opportunities to work, to say that they're helping people, but they have no capacity to really do that. Or maybe even a desire. So if you take families living in Kendallwood Phase 1 who can't afford their rent, who should be in a 30% unit and they may be in a 60% unit, the money is sitting down at City Hall for them to supplement it. But this family has now from September and before September, but when I brought it to everybody's attention, to today, not received any services. So based on logic that families just need to do better, we're going to tell those parents just go get another job, and kids figure out what to do at home and soothe yourself. And you're not even going to go into an education system, because if you're hungry because your mom is using all the money to pay the bills, and you didn't eat before you came to school, we still want you to figure out a way to focus. So that's the current issue.
Yeah.
All of these. Did somebody say something?
No.
Okay. That's just have all of these moving parts to it that we don't think about. Then we're sitting there to the kid who can't focus in school because all of this stuff is going on at home. And what I hear us saying a lot of time is that the parents should just do better. We know that most people can't afford to live in this community anymore, right? And that without some assistance, some kind of rent caps, which are not legal in the area through the state, that people are going to continue to struggle. But we want them to be more resilient and have more grit and figure it out, and for the kids to be stellar in school and make it to college, even if your parents should. And then we ultimately, I think, sometimes get to the question of, why can't you afford your rent?
Mm-hmm.
Why pay people $200,000 because we know people can't afford it, right?
Yeah. So Nikuyah, what do you say to the rebuttal then? I guess what's your rebuttal to the rebuttal of that? We have to at least honor progress, right? Like for, let's say, and I have no idea what the statistic may be, but the example remains the same. For every one or two that gets pulled out of poverty, that gets, decent employment, good living wage, right? There's going to be others who didn't make it. For a second. So some would say, is there progress? Can we point to any progress? And are we asking for too much at once?
Well, I'd like to hope that no one has that exact thought, Charles, but
they do. There are some that do.
But what I do think, you're right. But what I do think that our local government as a whole, the thought they probably have is, we can only do so much. Like, what is it that you're expecting us to do? We can only offer so many resources, and we only have so much money. And I'm not even going to bring into the equation the budget cuts that the federal government is doing right now. So what can we do?
So, and that goes back to what are the marching orders?
Yeah.
If you look at let's go with the city council. What I saw the city council prioritizing is internal, which, I mean, I'm all for people being paid well. There's no one that can find on record where I didn't advocate or support. So I'm done, sealed, right, for that. But is that the top priority? Internally, we knew that we needed to bring the people at the bottom, like the person who had been there 28 years and who was still earning, $16, $17, right, an hour. That looked very different than the person who was there and was earning $90,000 a year and thought they should have been making $120,000 a year, right? But because the city had an issue with having that conversation, then you do this across the board thing where everybody gets an increase, right? And so, one, is there any actual leveling that ever happens to that? But two, those are resources that now have to go to keeping your staff afloat. Keeping things internal afloat. Once the pay rises, the benefits, the contributions to retirement plans, all of that changes. So I saw a lot more of that. I heard the city say we're going to get our internal house in order. What does that mean for the community? Looking at Vibrant Community Fund, looking at the Council Strategic Fund, you can go back and see how Wes and I were just like, woo, 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 with things, throw it out there and see what happens. Is that always the best? But doing nothing is not, okay. If those dollars are not changing for what investments look like. And another thing that's still happening is you have the organizations, let's say an organization like Ready Kids, who I have an issue, I've said it consistently, that over the years I have issues with organizations like that, but they have the grant writers, they have the people internally that can make sure their files in order. And now they do a great job of making sure that they go and get Black people to be the face of the organization. That does not mean that they are serving people in all of their areas well, right? So a lot of times here, we think people are getting the assistance they need that Charlottesville is doing the thing that they need to do.
And we're just doing something wrong.
Yeah, the county doesn't even pretend. So
Mhm.
you sprinkle their crumbs, and that's what they have been doing. But if you start looking
UVA as well, right? You
at
could throw UVA and the county in there.
is the location that it is. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You can't even get me off track on that because I have to say about what has happened on there. And I'll just throw it out there since I'm here. You know, I put on Facebook that Jim Ryan is like a Sunday afternoon compared to JJ Davis. And I have a JJ Davis story about Longo being appointed to that position and what she thought, the United Front that she called me for us to come to on that is she is very interesting. And I would say that you can see the community interest in things die down without them thinking that this person has been beside the president of the university making critical decisions. And I would say that she's probably the one that has made a lot of the decisions that you are, you know, want to take his head off for a lot of times. And then who is asking, why are they comfortable with her if they were okay with removing him? And that goes back to what we're talking about. Like, people don't stay in the game long enough. They're not having the crucial conversations they need to have. It's like the jail expansion. Room full of people outside protesting jail expansion, but you're not protesting the police chief saying he's gonna lock our kids up.
Mm-hmm.
You're not protesting that the city council hasn't put more money into Vibrant Community Fund, but you're protesting expanding a jail because in your mind, that means more people are going to go to jail when people haven't stopped going to jail.
Yeah. And Jim Ryan is a great example, like that analogy as well, because we do have to be more cognizant of being careful what we wish for, right?
Yes.
Because while you want to fix a system, you got to make sure that you're not making it worse at the same time. Because if you don't get what you want, then grass is always greener kind of thing. And it's like there's a lot of people who could be better than Jim Ryan, but there's a whole lot right here at our doorstep ready that could be a lot worse.
I am sure that they could take your head off and not blink. I don't. Okay. And so again, we want perfection sometimes. We call for that. And again, I'm not a Jim advocate, even though I think some of the heat he got, he deserved a lot. And I gave him some of that. But a lot of times we don't think through of like why things start happening the way they happen. We are protesting why he's removed, but we again are not protesting who they feel comfortable in an interim capacity for him. We are comfortable with the city council not wanting to spend millions they didn't want to spend in the first place on jail expansion, but we are not going to follow through to make sure the money that they had committed to the jail expansion goes into some of these services we need. And then you have where people just, separate themselves from the outcome. I don't run Region 10. I'm not the person in charge of substance abuse services, but you want to know why you can't reach a kid who is high as a kite off of substances, and you want them to stop shooting up the neighborhood, or a parent who can't focus because they've numbed out on a substance. They have nowhere to go to get assistance, but you want them to sort of, do better. People don't have the mental health services they need. Wages are not increasing to the cost of living increases. Like all the things that we say that we know, the three of us sitting here, we know what it is to run our household, and we know what it's like when you do not have sufficient resources. Yeah, we don't go out and rob a bank, but I know my butt has sat there before like,
thought about it.
Kids. So, as you sat there and was like, okay, beans and rice again, let me find you something green. Somebody else was like, no, I'm gonna go out here and get it. Is that what? No, but we know that people want to eat.
That's right.
When the system, when I'm talking about what the system is, until it changes, until we are honest about every layer where people are hindered by it. And even this thought that there's some there's some parts of your life that isn't influenced by government.
Mm-hmm.
It's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And I was better off when I thought like that. But government decides everything from whether your streets are clean, your trash to pick up, whether you can turn your water on in your house, and who's to do that. Like the University of Virginia cannot pay water bill for 30 years, but you can go 1 month without paying it. And if without paying, if you go without paying it, you're somehow not a great parent. But the University of Virginia, with an $8 billion endowment, can debate about whether they start paying their water bill fully immediately or take 4 years to do it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah.
You can negotiate like that. So I would leave us with, because I think that's what you're trying to get me to do, is for us to have more compassion and grace with people who are, for the people who have the capacity to fight the system on behalf of those who don't have the capacity to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, if we don't figure out how to have a more unified fight in this community, and don't take the ego out of the equation, because some people just want to be the person or the people that do a thing. If we don't figure out how to come together, and what is the Black agenda for Charlottesville, Virginia? What are we going to advocate for? I'm right now thinking of what Impact does every year, and Impact drove me crazy. But what they do have is, you have these primarily, a group of white people saying every year we're going to come with a topic. And when I tell you they don't take no, you're going to come, they're going to sit you down, they're going to grill you, not in a nice way, and tell you this is what we expect for you to do. And then when they give you their timeline and you don't do it, they're on your butt again. If we were doing that, we're considered aggressive. We're having debates about what are our responsibility, while we have this group fighting on our, on behalf of low income people. They don't do Black people, it's low income people. But we don't have that. We have these silos where everyone is doing a thing, but we are not necessarily coming together to do the thing. The other thing that I'm seeing is, I think we replace like the need for joy, but that takes up a considerable amount of our time. And we do need joy, and I'm all about joy. But we have to do more than think that just providing a kid a fun experience on a Saturday is going to fill them for school for the week.
That's right.
I think we got lost somewhere there too.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Or give them what they need to matriculate through life.
Yeah.
And but I feel like that we would be remiss if we didn't at least allow you to address DEI being under attack, because I feel like that's the culmination of this conversation. Just if you could touch on quickly on, if the city is faced, though, because we don't know what the state house is going to look like. We know what the federal house is going to look like for maybe another 3 years. So if there is significant cuts, right, then how should we address? Like, if money becomes even bigger issue, because folks are saying you can't say you're doing this for Black people.
Yeah.
Before you respond to, I just want to say something else to your last comment. So if nothing changes, our situation as a Black community here in the city of Charlottesville stays the same or gets worse. We don't find a way to work together. If we don't advocate for those who need it and love on those who need it as well, nothing changes,
well, it does change.
Okay.
I mean, you at the rate that we're going now.
Okay.
Small, probably elite class of Black people who live within the city limits.
Okay.
And they will probably make, Black people look good and great and excellent. And the rest of us will be somewhere else. And there will be a community to really talk about. You'll just have plaques up on a wall saying Black people used to be here. That's where we're headed. Change.
Okay. All right.
Then we should take real quick about DEI changes and how we address these specific issues when they're telling us that we can't specify these specific people.
Well, the city will fit right into there. When I started to get the deputy city manager position, we named that position racial equity, diversity, and inclusion, wanting to make sure that the racial piece and people understand that there was a major race issue in the city of Charlottesville. That was changed maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, something like that, to the Office of Social Equity. So the city will fit right in. The city has been challenged before this current group of leaders and why they had such a hard time with me and people who were really like pro-Black and openly talked about Blackness and our amazing, not just because there's amazing things happening in Charlottesville to other than, you know, the shootings. They didn't want to hear that everybody had a right to get to this place of where they were doing well and experiencing joy and all of that. It was hard for them. So I don't think the city will have a challenge not talking about it. Now, there are some things that they're doing, but even if we go back to housing, when I would make statements like Black people used to fill these neighborhoods and now they don't, where are they? I would get met with responses from some people who are current leaders in the city that like the All Lives Matter response, all of our citizens need housing. When I would say that Black people were moved down on housing lists so that refugee families could come in and live, not that I don't think that they don't, you know, they place to live, but should you have moved the Black people who were struggling down on a list to there are people who are still like today that I've been on this list for decades? No, that is. And the leaders in town made those decisions on who to prioritize for housing. And that's at Friendship Court and that's at CRHA. So we're not even talking about private housing. So you go through a neighborhood and the majority of people are not Black and you say, where did the Black people go, when you're met with a response that all people deserve housing, without acknowledging that leaders in this town made sure that Black people were not included in that all, that's a problem. So I will say the city does better than most, but if I had to rank where the city was at on, that list, it wouldn't be very high. The city has a lot of work to do. They floor in pretense more than the actual doing of a thing. And they may do a thing to say they're doing a thing, but they don't do a thing fully, So
we got you.
Now the police chief just made a bold statement about not working with ICE. That's going to get, some more attention. We know Charlottesville was mentioned during the last election cycle. So Charlottesville has been, on the radar. But back to the city council, what those leaders need to make decisions about is that there are pots of money in the city that they don't want to touch because it's reserved. So they have to make a decision, like if it comes down to our most vulnerable struggling or tapping into these reserves, will we do it? The city loves their AAA bond rating. And I'm sure the city manager don't want to be the city manager that the bond rating drops for the first time. But if you are concerned about a bond rating over whether your people struggle the most for council or the city manager, which means that you're prioritizing basically it's like just to, for public terms, if your credit score 800 and you're like, I'm not touching that, even if your credit usage lowers your score, you're like, I'm not going to touch that because I'm not going to feed my family with that because I don't want my credit score to drop. Essentially, just a quick example of what that would mean for the city to say, oh, we're going to keep this bond rating and we're not going to exceed this percentage. People are out there starving. They can make a decision and let that bond rating dip. They can make a decision to, tap into some of their reserves. They can make a decision to put some of the internal programs and pay increases on hold, for a while. They can make a decision to not pave some streets and do some sidewalks, not make the city, trashy and look, you can still do upkeep, but sidewalk in, right? They're going to have to make a decision to prioritize people and figure out how to stay afloat. And I don't have any faith that they'll do that well.
Well, the perceived problem with that is that everybody has a need. And so for you to not do my sidewalk is just as important as you helping to provide someone with housing, right? At least that's what the type of things that we hear. Out of curiosity, Nikuyah, I wanted to ask, I know the police chief has been in what some would be fully engaged with like the local community and doing walkthroughs, knocking on doors, talking to families, talking about their needs and wants out of their local law enforcement system. And I'm just curious of whether or not you and the police chief have ever engaged. Have you had a sit down where you can share some of your opinions or ideas of how we might have a better police department in terms of community engagement and what the feedback was if that happened?
Yeah, so I have met with the police chief, and I guess our conversation was somewhat, I mean, I have pleasant conversations with people. I'm a pleasant person, even though that I did challenge him. I challenged even on, I mean, from the beginning, like why this position is even open for you to be here. Connection with the university and Longo and what I think, I mean, I wasn't there, but speculate even got the position. So we had some very hard conversations.
Okay.
Then Chief Brackney left amazing, trail for someone to follow. So he has her work there. That he can follow. What my main concerns have been for him is this very open, confident statements about locking our kids up when we know there's a problem. He did immediately start, using the language of like advocating that this doesn't begin with the police department. It shouldn't end with the police department type thing, that more things have to happen. But at the same time, you can go back and look at how many people have been arrested, during this time period. I wish the other day when I saw his statement on ICE, I wish it made a statement about not participating in mass incarceration with Black bodies in the same way. That's not saying that Hispanic people who are really participating in criminal behaviors can run free. He said that we, the city of Charlottesville, will not do as ICE is instructing. Basically, I don't have his full statement there, but I read, the article. He didn't say that criminals can be criminals and get away with it. He made a statement like, this is not our job to do. And so I wish people would take those kind of stances with understanding that if you took that same position about the criminal justice system and how it has used Black bodies to fill prisons, then you would not be saying in that instance, let criminals run free, let people shoot up the neighborhood. You would say that it is not my priority to lock people up. You would not be advocating for increases in your budget. You would be advocating for increases in human services budget.
That's right.
You would then be holding them accountable. You wouldn't be giving police oversight board slack about, transparency with you. You would be giving them free reign to monitor. You would be expanding on some of the things like the Fourth Amendment analyst that Chief Brackney put in place, and you wouldn't have hired back officers that she fired or demoted.
Yeah.
So there are all of things, and your officers wouldn't feel comfortable like they did over in the Prospect area yesterday, ruffling up a young Black man over some damn tags.
True that. Hey.
Comfortable. So he has a lot of work to do. He's pleasant. People like him. I've heard people comment, I've said this before, on how he looks. I care nothing. How are Black people doing under his leadership? And are we setting the same scene for people to talk about their fathers were in prison, their mothers were in jail, and they had no hope when they're a kid, and expect them to have, some hope as adults? That's what we focus on. And if we are fighting against jail expansion, we shouldn't be in a picture hugging him. We shouldn't be letting him toss a football to our kids, getting them to trust a system that we know that they can't trust. and we would be holding them accountable. And then if you like him after you hold him accountable, smile at him or something.
Mm-hmm.
But people are missing big about on that accountability piece, and then they're wanting again to push it on families. Or the saddest part that I've seen in the last few years, which is what the schools did a few years ago, when they wanted to hold the youth accountable, they allowed the media to spread the narrative about all the wrongs that were going on in the school system were Black kids, and that Black kids were incapable of learning, and so they could just push them out into any old thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nikuyah, we got to run, but thank you so much. This has been deep, a wealth of knowledge.
That's
and
right.
Very rich conversation. And I think what I love about it is that I feel like that we hit it from all angles. We had all the perspectives because this is simple but yet complex, right? Like we can say what should be done and we can know what should be done, but then how do we administer it?
That's right.
So that's why we always appreciate you.
And I got worked up.
Oh, we got you worked up. Sorry, I didn't want to do it. Hey, look, we're going to let you go so you can enjoy your Sunday, right? Yeah. No, our lines are always open. I'll always appreciate you. So till next time, keep up the great work. Keep causing good trouble, Nikuyah.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.